Asta would have currently been flying around the Clover Kingdom, the Clover Kingdom's capital, I should say, sending down lightning bolts at many of the zombies. He would actually end up leaving simply ashes in their place every time he struck down on each zombie. Nozel would have been pretty aggravated over the fact that Asta decided to just leave out of nowhere without staying to even form a plan. But at the very least, this kid seemed rather capable of himself, at least in a fight. Was he reckless? Oh, 100%. He was completely out of this world in terms of recklessness, but at the very least he knew that this kid was strong and powerful in terms of magic. Strong in terms of, well, physical strength. The whole issue right now was to actually find the source of where all these zombies were coming from. Asta would have actually been the one to be looking, and you would actually find the creator of all of these zombies, find the source of the zombies, apparently being right outside of the capital. A ragged looking man was apparently using his mana to reanimate the corpses that would attack innocent villagers and, well, civilians, you could say. Asta would realize that this was a guy he was looking for, and he would immediately head down. He would approach Radies and immediately just sucker punch him in the face. Radies would be aggravated. He was actually livid right now, and he would glare daggers at Asta. But the boy would be unfazed though. He would stare with an intense flame in his eyes right back at Radies. He would demand answers from this straggler, wanting to know why he was doing this and how to make these guys stop, make all of these zombies stop. Radies would just laugh, mentioning how he used to be a magical knight, just like Asta, except when it came on to the people that he surrounded himself with, they were apparently fearful of him due to the type of magic he possessed. So they decided to cast him out. He was simply seeking his revenge. Asta would question why he was taking it out on the innocent though. Radies would just laugh in Asta's face as a response. Asta would be annoyed and he would just punch Radies in the face once more. Or, well, I should say at least try to punch Radies in the face. You see, Radies this time around he would immediately summon some zombies to defend him. Asta would have punched right through them though. Seeing the zombies, Asta would simply generate electricity around his whole body, which would electrocute every single one of the zombies around him to the point where, well, there was nothing left of them, just ash. And Radies would just tisk before summoning Alfred. This would have been a corpse that used lightning magic in order to fight Asta. He figured that since the two of them had lightning magic, then it might be a quote-unquote fair fight, you could say, or a fair match. He would just see who was going to be the stronger of the lightning magic users. Asta, he just wasn't going to be in the mood for this whatsoever. He wasn't in the mood for entertaining Radies whatsoever. Instead, Asta would leap forward, slicing down Alfred until it was mincemeat. Radies would attempt to summon Jimmy, but Asta would shoot wind bullets at Radies. This would actually pierce through different areas of his body. He would pin Radies down and have a sword pointed to their throat. He would demand that Radies call off a zombie army, and Radies would decline though, preferring to die than to submit to a magical knight. Asta wouldn't be all that happy about killing Radies, but if it meant stopping the rampage, then, well, he supposed he would just have to consider the usage of the lesser of two evils. after plunging his sword through Radies' throat. Asta would see the dozens of zombies actually collapse. Asta had the feeling that there were more people like Radies out there, but he couldn't pinpoint them just yet. His main concern right now was to find out the condition of the other magical knights and the civilians. He would bring the body of Radies with him as evidence of his interaction with the man. He figured that some of the magical knights would recognize him as well, considering how he claimed to have originally been a magical knight. He wasn't sure if they were lying or not, or if he was even really dead. So bringing them to the magical knights would probably be the best option here, because even if it did turn out that he was alive, there was going to be a chance that they would just apprehend him immediately. His magic was pretty weird after all. He had the ability to control corpses, so who was to say he couldn't revive himself? It wasn't a stretch of the imagination, but well, actually, no. You could say it might be a stretch of the imagination, but at the same time, Asta had never really encountered corpse magic before, so he wasn't really wanting to risk it. He didn't want to take any chances here. Asta went search for the closest magical knight at the time, and it would just so happen to be Fuegolion. He would hand the body of Radies over to Fuegolion, and Fuegolion, after Asta explained the situation to him, would continue to be impressed by Asta's strength. This boy just seemed to be full of surprises. He honestly wished that the boy had joined his squad, with how rapidly he was growing in terms of strength. The next day, Julius would report what happened to the civilians while explaining that it wouldn't happen again. They were going to put more measures into protecting the citizens moving forward. Asta would try to leave the capital with Noel later on, only to get lost along the way. They would end up meeting up with Klaus, Mimosa, and Yuno while on their path out to the city, or at least while trying to find their path out of the city. And, as soon as he encountered Asta, would use this chance to attack the boy, which the latter would just block, only to see the spell form letters afterwards. It would read, actually simply saying goodbye. Asta would chuckle reading it, and he would decide to simply fly out to the capital after a little while longer of being lost, and he would even just grab Noelle by the waist. She would squeak in surprise when Asta grabbed her, and she would blush along the way, but the two of them would eventually just arrive back at the Black Bull's base, where Magna would immediately confront Asta, mentioning how Asta's actions managed to get her group another star. Asta would smile seeing this, and the excited looks on both Magna and, Luck's face. Well, to be honest, when it came on to Luck, he always had a pretty excited face. But when it came on to Luck, it wasn't really much about the star, to be honest. It was more so about the fact that Asta was back and he could probably fight him again. He was really going to cherish these moments, though. That's something that Asta would just mentally make a note of. Asta would also tell Magna how he managed to rise up in the ranks of magical knights recently as well. Yami, hearing this, would actually congratulate Asta on his efforts. He would explain the importance and how much of an honor it was to actually be promoted, especially so early on in his magical knight career. He would pat Asta on the back before leaving to get a new cigar. Once Yami left though, Finrod would approach Asta and request that he actually accompany him on a blind date of sorts. He already managed to convince Luck after all. Asta wouldn't really know what a blind date was though, so Finrod would just sigh. before, well, explaining the whole concept of a blind date. Asta wouldn't be particularly interested until, well, Finral mentioned the whole thing about a potluck, food, all that sort. That was the only thing that actually enticed Asta. His eyes would definitely widen in intrigue, wanting to know more about what was going to be served. Finral would just sweat drop at Asta's reaction. Of course he would be interested in the mention of food. This was just so in character for Asta at this point, it was ridiculous in Finral's mind. The fact that he cared very little for the girls, but more so for the food. Okay. At least he managed to get Asta on board. That was all that really mattered. They would just head out a little later. Sometime later, the three would introduce themselves to, well, the girls that they were supposed to be on a blind date with. And these three girls, I'm gonna be honest, they wouldn't be particularly impressed at first with the three black bulls. It would be rather awkward for a while, but eventually luck would be the first of the three to actually entertain their date. Surprisingly enough, Asta would become interested in the girl Rebecca's story when she mentioned how she didn't even really want to be on a date, but rather with her siblings. She was honestly just doing it as a favor for one of her friends. Asta would mention how he had siblings as well, albeit foster siblings, but they were his siblings nonetheless. The two would actually get into a long discussion about how their siblings would usually act this way or that way, and the two of them would actually bond over it. A drunkard would actually approach their table though at one point and try to grab onto Rebecca while mentioning how her efforts at finding a man were seemingly fruitless until now. Asta would notice the discomfort in Rebecca's eyes, and he would actually step up to defend the girl. He would grab the man's hand and fling him to the other side of the room quite casually. Rebecca would be in shock, not expecting for Asta to have such strength. Well, he did look fairly muscular, but she once again wasn't expecting for Asta to be capable of just flinging a grown man all the way to the other side of a restaurant with just the usage of one hand. That was a ridiculous amount of strength just used there. The two would just leave the restaurant afterwards. Rebecca would just thank Asta for what he did back at the restaurant and go on to actually question if there was anyone he was romantically interested in. Asta would shake his head, and in response, Rebecca would blush and confess how Asta had become someone of interest to her. She would basically offer this to Asta. She would offer that the two of them get to know each other more. One day, at the very least. They weren't sure when, but it would definitely happen eventually. Well, maybe even they could arrange some sort of occasion where the two could go and meet each other's siblings. Maybe he could come over to where she lived so he could meet his siblings, vice versa. Asta would actually agree to this and smile. The two would hug before departing. That one day would turn out to be rather soon though. You see, it wouldn't take long for the two to meet up again because, well, Asta can fly. Asta would bond with Rebecca and her siblings rather quickly, and Gauche would be walking in at the moment. And Asta had begun playing with Gauche's little sister, although at the time Asta wasn't even really considering that. He'd seen Gauche mention his little sister on multiple occasions, even shown pictures of the little girl, but honestly, he never expected for Gauche to actually appear here. As soon as Gauche saw Asta playing with his little sister, he would immediately just bombard Asta with magical attacks from of course his mirrors. Marie would demand for her older brother to stop bullying Asta though. He was going to be a future husband after all. This would only make the situation even worse. You see, Asta would actually be very confused hearing that. Rebecca would nervously laugh, and Gauche wasn't really finding this to be all that funny. Gauche wouldn't really know how to actually react hearing such a statement from his little sister. Well, actually, he knew exactly how to react. He just didn't know how to react in front of her. Right now, he just honestly wanted to murder Asta, put the boy 6 feet under right about now, but he just couldn't do that in front of his precious Marie. He didn't know how his precious Marie would react if he were to do such a thing, and including the whole issue of this being her birthday. That would be tragic if he were to just try and kill somebody right in front of Marie on her birthday. He had a heart, well, a small heart, really only reserved for Marie, but a heart nonetheless. He was pretty much just imagining what would happen, and he would imagine his precious Marie just break into tears and even mention how she hated her older brother. He was honestly just about to pull out his hand in frustration, thinking about what to do, but right at this moment the nun, Sister Therese, would arrive to pick up Gauche's little sister. Gauche would immediately begin to plot his revenge against Asta right after the two left. He figured he would just kill Asta in his sleep and have it seem as if it was just an accident, or, well, someone else decided to kill him. His little sister, if she would ever get married, she would have to be getting married to, well, a guy that Gauche approved of. And Asta obviously wasn't one of the people that Gauche approved of whatsoever. So, during the night, Gauche would, try to kill Asta, only for the boy to dodge in his sleep. Asta would wake up and realize what was going on, and he would try to calm Gauche down, but it wasn't really working. He would proclaim that Asta would never, ever get married to his little sister. He would make that declaration, and Asta would create several clouds to block Gauche's attacks and restrain the mirror magic user right after. He would try to reason with Gauche through this method, but Rebecca, she would rush over to Asta's area with panic in her face, or like on her face right now. She would explain that her siblings had just gone missing. Rebecca wouldn't be the only one either though. Asta would go outside to see that many people were wandering around looking for their children. The place had also become a snowy terrain suddenly as well. This was very odd in Asta's book. Noelle would appear explaining how she saw some guy leading the children up a mountain. Asta would thank her for the info before questioning where she even came from. Noelle would make a quick lie about her simply passing by, and although Asta was a bit suspicious, he wouldn't focus on it for too long. You see, he had much bigger things to deal with right now. Sister Therese would head over to Asta's area as well in order to explain where the snow was coming from. It was apparently from a spell which enabled the user to manipulate the minds of those with undeveloped magic. Some other children from the church, including Marie, were also missing. Hearing that Marie was missing would actually get the interest or well, not much interest, more so the anger, the wrath, you could say, of Gauche. He would call out Sister Therese for her irresponsibility when it came on to his precious Marie. All she had to do was make sure his little sister was safe. He could care less about the other kids though. He was about to attack her, but Asta would once again restrain Gauche. He honestly didn't even know how Gauche was able to break out of the first set of restraints. He figured that it was probably because of the fact that he had lost his concentration due to everything else that was going on at the time that made the restraints loosen up on Gauche the first time. But he wasn't about to have it happen again, with just how angry and, well, unusual? That's not the word. Basically, I don't know. Basically, it's like this. Gauche was acting irrational. He needed Gauche to calm down from this wrathful state he was in and become more rational in his thoughts before he was willing to release him from his restraints. Once Gauche calmed down somewhat, he would remember about a magical mirror that he actually gave to his little sister that allowed him to actually keep track of where she was. Asta wanted to question why Gauche would have such a thing, but he would decide against it considering how important it became in this instant. Asta, Gauche, and Therese would immediately leave following the signal they were being given. When they made their way to the cave, Asta would notice that one of the children was on the ground outside of the cave. While Gauche went to deal with finding his sister, Asta and Therese, they would descend to check on the condition of the child exposed to the elements. Asta would realize that the boy was still under the influence of the spell though. Asta wouldn't be all that sure on how to undo the spell at best. He could use a sword in order to absorb the spell, but that could be a stretch of its abilities. He was hoping it would work though. Asta would rest the sword on the boy's head, and thanks to the power of plot, it would actually work. Teresa would use her fire magic to warm Michael and, well, heal his injuries. Michael would be afraid of being left alone, so Asta would leave his robe for him to wear until he came back with the other children. Michael would be comforted by the robe and agreed to stay put afterwards. When Asta and Therese arrived inside the cave, they would see Gauche in a 2v1 battle against their brothers Ninj and Baro. I'm probably butchering these names to be honest, but oh well. Asta would deal with removing the spell casted upon the children first. After that was settled with, Asta would show no mercy towards the brothers by producing black lightning. He was livid. To brainwash and kidnap these little children was just a whole other level of low in Asta's book. They didn't deserve his pity whatsoever. The brothers would try to block the attack, but their efforts would prove to be fruitless in the end. Asta would leave the two brothers unconscious. He wanted to kill them, but he figured he could get some information out of them later on. He would have the two brothers restrained, and Asta would then lead the children back home afterwards. The two brothers would be brought into custody, and Asta's assistance would be requested at the Magical Knights HQ in order to help interrogate the brothers. He would use his sword in order to undo the spell that was keeping the brothers from talking about their relation to the Eye of the Midnight Sun. The Wizard King's assistant, Mike's, would go on to set up a spell that would allow him to interrogate the two brothers, with their answers being absolute. Then the questioning process, they would end up finding out about a traitor among their ranks though. It was the captain of the Purple Orca. And yeah, that's basically it for part 2 of what Asta was. Veldora's reincarnation. You guys can thank Neptune for the help on the story so far. And well, I'll basically leave the link to our Wattpad in the description if you guys are interested in checking out our own story content as well in terms of reading capabilities. Also, I have left a link to my server in the description as well. And if you like the video, well, maybe hit the like button. If you've been rocking my content for a little while, maybe hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, and if you think more people would be interested in this sort of content, maybe share it with some of them as well. But beyond that, that's all I have to really say. Titan Clan, it is your boy King Titan X signing out. Peace.